Hi, welcome to the Haven Writers Guild podcast.
We invite you to join us as we explore the curious world of writing. Alright, so I've got this friend, let's call him Joe.
Okay.
And he's written a manuscript, he's submitted it to several publishers, but no one has yet picked it up.
Yeah.
Which I cannot understand because I've read it. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
I think it should be on the shelf.
Well, why doesn't he self-publish then?
I happen to know that he has how do I say this nicely? I don't think that self-publishing is something that he wants to go for. He has a more traditional, as do I.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like traditional publishing, and I think...
Well, what's so good about traditional publishing then?
Because when you go to a traditional publisher and you've got your manuscript and you've worked really hard on it, you're basically saying to them, is this good enough? Is this good enough to be put on a shelf? And a publisher comes with instant reputation. Mm-hmm. You know, they're looking at hundreds of manuscripts. And so if they actually say, yes, I'm willing to put my name behind this, I'm happy to actually say, like, put this forward and promote this, there's something vilifying about that. You've done something good. I think if you self-publish, what filters are you going through? Who's actually saying, yes, this is good enough to put out to the public? You're just saying that you are good enough and, you know, putting your work into a system and getting it up on Amazon and then whatever. I mean, look, if people want to do it, that's great. But, I mean, do you actually think you're going to self-publish when you finish your manuscript?
Look, I suppose there are a lot of works out there that are self-published that would not necessarily be up to a publisher's standards. I think, as you say, self-publishing is getting quite possibly a bit slack, but I think it's a really exciting way of creating work that isn't kind of filtered through a system. You know, like I really think that the publishing houses, you know, maybe 50 years ago, that's pretty much the only route that you can take, is you have to go through a publishing house. So, and the thing that publishing houses don't always get it right. Like, they've passed up brilliant works of fiction because it wasn't, you know, the right thing for the occasion. Like, your friend might actually have a really exciting, interesting piece of literature that people really want to read, but they're not going to read it because it's not going to, you know, make 100 million copies at the moment. I really think that publishing houses, it's leveling the playing field. That's what I think it's doing anyway. It's giving another side to things. It's giving other opportunities. So
yeah, maybe, but I don't know that it's leveling the playing field. I think you've got publishing playing one game and self-publishing playing another. I think maybe initially self-publishing was a really exciting venture, and it was this brand new way of getting your work out there without having to go through the system. But what's happened now is that everyone is self-publishing. I mean, you don't even have to have a great idea or a unique idea. It's just, hey, I've written a book because I think I can, and slapping it out there. And then you've got, I think what's happened...
There's no guarantee of I know what you're saying in terms of no guarantee of quality, but I think the thing is that there are a lot of self-publishers who are using services that publishers use. So they're using people like professional editors to go over their work. And I think a lot of publishers these days are expecting a lot more from people who actually send in their books. So, like, if your friend was to send in your book to the publishing house, and depending on which one he got, they may take his work and they may expect him to have it edited up to a certain extent. The publishing house itself may not edit it to the extent you expect. So I think self-publishers are actually going to editors who are professionals and getting their work edited before they put it up there. So they're kind of using the same services. So,
well, you would hope, but I'm not seeing the evidence of that. And I think the one thing I will concede is that, because I do have another friend who has been published, but what she noticed is the absolute lack of marketing. Once upon a time, you know, if a publisher actually decided to pick up a book and an author, and they would actually put the full weight of their name behind it and, you know, do a book tour and an actual book launch and promote, because the only way they were going to make money is if the book made money.
Yeah.
So they would actually, market a book.
Yeah.
And I think now, maybe it's the rise of social media, possibly, but publishers are expecting authors to do their own marketing. They're expecting an existing platform, an existing audience. And I have heard literary agents actually say, if you don't have an existing audience and evidence that you've done your own marketing and that the book will sell because you already have an audience, publishers won't look at you, which is horrifying. And it is almost enough to deter me from traditional publishing. But there is something very old-fashioned in me that wants... I want a publisher to say, yes, this is great and I love it and I want to publish it for you.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. I mean, that was my idea as well. I sort of always had this image of when I eventually got a novel together that I would send it off to a publisher and, you'd send it off and you'd get rejections and so on and so forth. But eventually you'd get that magical one and then you'd go and, I suppose you'd get hotel rooms and book signings at the bookshops and things like that. So I know what you're saying. But I think just looking into the whole thing of the self-publishing is just, rather than having all that anxiety and pressure and eventually getting there, is actually at your fingertips. Like I'm sort of seeing, I suppose, YouTube videos of people who are actually doing it quite quickly, not having to go through that whole bit. And it's kind of, I don't know, I think it's kind of positive. I mean, me personally, I'm not going to, come up with a rubbish product. I like to think that something I'm going to get is going to be good and I want it edited by a professional. And the thing is, like you say with the publisher, you've got to build your own audience. So a lot of the time, unless they're really big.
Yeah, look, I know what you're saying. I think there is something in me that does not want to join the masses that are rushing to self-publish. And it does feel like a bit of a collection of books that should have ended up on the slush pile. I want a book from a shelf. I want a publisher's logo on it because I'm willing to put my trust in that. I don't have enough time to be jumping online and sifting through all these self-published authors when the quality is not as good. And if there happens to be a great writer who's published themselves and they're sitting out there, the chances of me actually finding them are slim. And this whole thing where you've got self-published authors just putting their stuff out and pumping stuff out, it's just, I don't know, I think it's tainted the industry. I think it's tainted the quality of writing.
Yeah, see, I don't really think I actually agree with that, because I think really it is opening things up and just taking a lot of the restraints that publishers have set on what gets through to an audience. I mean, if you sort of break everything down to the very simple act of an author creating, I would say, a work of art and communicating it with an audience, which is it should be a very simple process, really. Tapping away in a typewriter or the computer, very simple. They're creating something essentially out of nothing, imagination put onto the page and then communicated with the readership. And this is what self-publishing does. It creates a straightforward way of people to communicate their work. I mean, there are tons of editing programs online for people to use, and there are professional editors that don't cost a fortune, and there are printers who don't cost a fortune. So someone can take a piece of themselves, a piece of art, and communicate it with an audience.
I mean, what defines art? What are you calling art? Because anyone can call themselves an artist and try and come up with something that is worth seeing or reading. But at the end of the day, you need someone to actually qualify that this is worthwhile. This is worth spending your time looking at. Yes, removing the middleman may remove that step, but I think that step is necessary.
Yeah, well, maybe. I think that's, you let the people decide, I think there are obviously thousands of people self-publishing their books, and there's lots and lots of works out there, but people are still deciding what's good and what's not, and people are reading these things, and even if something is not necessarily great, there's usually some interesting things in it, and there's a lot of it out there, and people are deciding what they like and what they don't like. I think this is just a great way of, passing by a select group of institutions that are deciding for us what is good and what is not good, and I think that they're wrong a lot of the time, and that self-publishing ultimately is a great way of connecting that artist to an audience.
Well, that is difficult to argue with, but
I'm sure you'll find a way.
I'll find a way.
Thank you for joining us on the Haven Writers Guild podcast today.
If you'd like more writing support, find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or on our website. Or you can email us directly at havenwritersguild@gmail.com.